Hey, this is Ross Richie. I'm the founder and the CEO of Boom Studios. And you would know Boom from Something is Killing the Children, Once and Future, That We Only Find Them When They're Dead, and Seven Secrets, Lumberjanes, Mouse Guard, a bunch of other stuff. I'm talking today to the co-writer of BRZRKR, the new series that we are publishing that was created by Keanu Reeves and written by Keanu Reeves with Matt Kindt. The amazing Matt Kindt, you would know from doing PISTOLWHIP for Top Shelf and getting nominated for an Eisner for his very first graphic novel, as well as the spectacular and amazing Mind Management from Dark Horse Comics and a slew of other brilliant series, including Black Badge at Boom and the amazing FOLKLORDS. So love Mr. Matt Kindt. What a great friend. What a joy to talk to. And let's talk to Matt Kindt. So, all right, so let's go. So you're born in New York.
Yeah, Cheektowaga, New York.
Yep, Cheektowaga.
Outside of Buffalo, we had family there, and then I don't remember any of it. I was a baby, so I don't remember. They took me away. My parents took me away, and we moved to St. Louis, following my dad. My dad's a preacher, so we sort of followed him to the churches when he would go change churches. We would go there, so we went to St. Louis, and then I kind of grew up there. I was there. I don't know, through first grade, whatever age that is, first grade. And then from there, we moved to Lexington, Missouri, which is a small town outside of Kansas City, like an hour away from the nearest comic book shop, is how I remember it.
So, that's the only thing that matters, right? Is how far away you are from the comic book shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of which, when do you first? What's your memory of encountering comics?
Comics. There was it starts with my brother, I guess, because my brother is 6 years older, and so he was collecting comics, and I just remember him stacking them up in his closet in a place where I couldn't get to him, because he's very particular. I couldn't even go in his room without permission. And It wasn't the comics either. It was like everything, like toys, anything he had, like he had it all arranged. So I would go in there. It's not like it would stop me. I would go in there and I would mess with stuff, and then he'd be all mad. He's like, "You touched how do you know?" He's like, "Because I have it just so." And I was like, "You're crazy." Meanwhile, my room is a complete mess. Like I mean, it was an absolute mess. Like our personalities when it comes to that stuff couldn't be more different, and then our personalities manifested in how our rooms were. Like his was clean and everything put away. Mine was like toys everywhere. Like when it was time to clean the room, everything got pushed under the bed, and then he got me on the comics. We would buy them from the local grocery store. Like they had the spring rack at the grocery store. So I started buying them off the rack there. And then
you're like, I'm gonna go get my own comics.
Yeah. So we would.
You don't let me touch yours. So
yeah, I was like, it's like the older brother phenomenon, where it's like, what are you doing? That looks cool. I want to do that. I didn't know. And it's funny too, like in hindsight, like it was an era where there was only like 4 or 5 channels. And I think we just gotten HBO,
you were big shakes if you had HBO.
Right. And as far as video, I'm trying to think of all the things that would be competition for comics, So like video games, we had an Atari, but those games, I didn't like video games because they just weren't fun to me. Like they look cool in the box, like the art looked great,
Right.
I can play this for like 15 minutes and I'm bored. I don't want to run around.
It's so interesting because I don't think people have context for that, where it's like, I think in particular, like folks like you and me, when we looked at that box art and we saw that, they were hiring classic illustrators to do that, these painters that were from doing the covers for science fiction novels and things like that. And it had such promise in it. You know, it isn't, it's like you and I bought paperbacks that had beautiful illustrations on the cover that led to amazing stories and untraveled worlds that blew our minds. But then you get the Atari video game home, and there's such a small number of those games from that era that were actually any good. It was mostly just that you didn't have entertainment choices. And the ones that were good were so transcendently good. You know, like Pac-Man was great in the arcade, but the home
Yeah.
version was horrific.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you get home, you get so excited in the store, you buy it, it's so expensive, you take it home. And that 15 minutes that you're talking about, like I lived that a million times.
Yeah, no, it's exactly true. So I was lucky to have grown up in an era where video games weren't what they are now, because I think now I would have, I mean, even now, like as a grown up, as a 47-year-old man, I'm like, I could just play video games all day if I didn't have more fun work to do, you
Yep.
know? But so luckily, so there was only that. There wasn't much, and like VHS, it just happened. So we, you know, I mean, you couldn't really rewatch movies until this then. And, so it just was like comics was like a natural progression or a natural companion to all like science fiction and crime books that I was reading. And so I was mostly just reading. I was reading books all day and reading comics too. Like there was no difference to me between comics and books. I was just reading everything, you know, and it was, you're right, because it was like the covers of the books were great, but the insides were even better, you know. It was,
Yep.
and
And you're creating the story in your mind. And I think that's also true of comics where the action between the panels, you know, what I always say to people that don't read comics is I say, you know what Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, you know what his voice sounds like. If we
yeah,
made an animated version tomorrow, you would instantly watch it and know if it was right or wrong. But
yeah,
where did you know that? You know, that's created in your head.
yeah,
And that's something that comics does that's unique, and novels do it as well. You know, that's the literary sort of like through line that they share. So, talk to me about some of the book influences that you had and some of the books that you're reading during this time.
yeah. So my brother was reading like Death of Phoenix, and so like around that same time, I caught the tail end of Daredevil. Frank Miller was
You,
still writing it, and I think Klaus Janson was doing the art, and so I caught that, and I was like, well, this is really great. You know, I hadn't read a lot of comics before then. I was that, and like GI Joe #1 came out, so I was buying Frank Miller's Daredevil and then GI Joe at the same time because that's, you know what I mean. I don't know how old I was. I was born in '73, so whatever year
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
like,
Well, Frank gets on Daredevil in '79, and
yeah,
and I think GI Joe #1 is like '82.
yeah. So that was like it was a perfect time to be in comic or get into comics. You know, it was the
Yes.
perfect day, like great stuff coming out, and it was '82. I mean, it was only 3 years till Watchmen and Dark Knight, so it was
Yep.
like I was priming. You're just watching comics on this. It's just about to take off, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I don't think GI Joe gets the proper shrift. I'm not a fan, and I don't mean that like I don't like it. I mean like it, I'm a little older than you, and so I
yeah,
was too old for it when it happened.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
sort of the generation behind me. But the thing is I can't tell you how many massively talented creative people who go on to have huge careers. The first comic that they had was GI Joe, and that got them into comics. And some of them are my screenwriter friends, and some of them are my comic book friends that
yeah,
are write and draw comics. And so I have nothing but and tremendous respect for it. I could go on and on and on creatively as an IP how brilliant GI Joe is. I think the most damning thing of it is that it's a rejected Shield pitch. So imagine if Marvel had actually done that as their version of Shield. I mean, it'd be a whole other company. But
yeah.
that's a different conversation. But the so as an artist, tell me some about, are you exploring your artistic, your painting side, your illustration side through school? I mean, how is that coming out?
Yeah, I remember like a lot of my earliest memories were like uh like seventh and eighth grade is when I really started being conscious of like, oh, I like to draw and I'm good at it. And they would have the art contest where they hang it all up and they put the blue ribbons on the best ones, and I'd won a couple of those. And then I was like, oh, this is, and you kind of, you like doing the thing you're good at. So I was like, I like doing this. I'm good at it. It's fun to draw.
I'm
It
getting
gets
positive feedback.
positive attention. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was never one of those kids that wanted attention no matter what. I never wanted negative attention. Like I always wanted just positive. I followed the rules, I was a good kid for my parents. Like my brother was the one that was breaking the rules and pushing the boundaries. And I was like, I'm content to like be in my room. I got all the books I need, all the comics I need, and I like to draw and I do. I remember seventh and eighth grade doing that, and I remember having I would always gravitate towards the other kids in school that would read comics, and it's like because there's always a few of us, and we were kind of the outcasty nerds of the school,
Yep.
and you'd see them with comics, and then you had comics, and you're like, hey, you like comics? Yeah, I love them.
Oh man, if I took comics to my school, I was dead. Like that,
Yeah.
that was not a, and I was a football player, so I wasn't afraid of anybody. But I'll tell you, I was done.
You had an
So
image
that's
to uphold.
jealous.
You couldn't just be reading comics.
Yeah, I should have gone to your school, man.
No, it wasn't any better. I was picked on all the time. We like kept to ourselves. We but yeah, so I remember that, and I remember like some of my earliest drawing memories are like art school in eighth grade or art class, and then my other friend, I had this friend to this day. I still have a friend, Bill Falls, who I named a character after in my management. He I remember sitting at his kitchen table, and we would just copy covers of comics. And I remember there's a cover of New Mutants with Cannonball that Bill Sienkiewicz had did that. I remember drawing that, like trying to replicate it exactly.
Yeah.
And and so I remember doing that, but it was never like, oh, I want to do art. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just don't. I never thought about what I was going to do when I grow up, kind of thing. I was like, just like I like reading, I like drawing. And by the time I got to high school, I was a sophomore in high school. I hadn't taken any art classes because it just didn't occur to me to take art classes. I was still drawing at home and everything, and and I really liked English class because they're making us read all the classics, and I remember like we had to read Huckleberry Finn, and that was the first, to me that was a transcendent moment for myself, and that he was teaching it, and it was the first time I was aware that uh, stories could be they're about something else. It's like metaphors, allegory, all that stuff. I
Yep.
was like, oh, this isn't an adventure going down the river. This is about like a lot of things, like coming of age and growing up, and the river means this, and I was like, wow, I love. I'm reading all these pulp books or whatever, and a lot of them are just like garbage, and then some of them are good, but it's all getting into me in my bloodstream. It's like
Yep.
because I'm reading everything. I don't have any. There's no filter. I'm reading like Bradbury and Philip K. Dick
Yep.
and Heinlein and Doc Savage and what else? Piers Anthony, and it was big at
Yep.
the time. I was reading like everything I could get my hands on. Um, so I was addicted to like genres, all the different genres of stuff, and and then I was drawing covers. Like I remember we had to do a report on Huckleberry Finn. I had made a little presentation. Had the whole thing typed up, and then I had done a cover and designed it and everything, and then turned it in, and then um, because I don't know, I just like drawing, and I like reading, whatever. I don't know why I did it, other than to get extra points or bonus points or whatever it was. And then I remember the next day, the art teacher pulled me aside in the hallway, and she's like, and I thought I was in trouble or something. She's like, hey, why aren't you taking any art classes? Like,
Wow.
I don't know. I was like, it never occurred to me to take art. I don't know why. Like,
Wow. That's
uh,
huge.
yeah. So she like recruited me into art class, and I started taking art classes, and then of course I loved it. It just seemed like a no-brainer. I was like, I don't know why. Then
Like I can't think of anything that is more Matt Kindt. And you get excited about a novel you're reading that has richer, deeper significance, and you do a painting, and that becomes your gateway to becoming, sort of taking art classes. I mean, that is such a great representation of your artistic voice. Because I think in particular, something that's really unique about your work, let me tell you about you. But something that's very distinct is you're a storyteller. That's the most important thing, is a through line that I see in your work. Is it's such a there's a very distinct group of people in comics that you can't pull apart the writer and the artist.
Yeah.
They're inextricable, and I think you're one of them.
Yeah, no, well, I appreciate it. And I get what you're saying, because I know, like, I immediately, like, some of my favorite creators, they're all writer artists,
Yep.
like Lemire and like Darwin Cook and Chris Ware and Daniel Klaus. And
Yep.
that's really like those are like my top 3 or 4, whatever they are. But yeah, it's just because to me, like, it's an artificial separation to separate the art and the writer,
Yep.
and it's the nature of our medium, and I've totally embraced it because it's fun to do. Like, I like the collaboration, but but yeah, I don't. That's why I never picked one or the other, and it's weird. As I get older, I was like, yeah, to me, it was a natural progression. There's no job on earth where you can be a writer and an illustrator at the same time, other than, like, there is no job. Like, even if you're in animation or anything that's combines both or whatever, there's never really one person doing all of it, And I was like, well, I can do everything, like, and so I did. Like, eventually I was like, I want to learn how to do it all. Like, I want to letter it. I learned how to do design.
All right, now I'm going to jump in here because we're skipping some steps.
Yeah. I don't want to skip ahead, but
I love it, but it's okay. So you have this moment, and now, you're in high school. You don't know what you want to do with your life, right? And so, how do you get from there to school, to college, rather?
yeah. So by the time my like junior year, we were still in Lexington, and I was taking art classes, and I was like, oh, I think I might be an artist. I think I might be an artist. The teacher, she was Mrs. Weinmiller, like, total credit to her, totally inspired me and recruited me and everything. And I remember it was 1989, because Batman with Michael Keaton had just come out, and I
Wow.
convinced her to take one day of class. I had the VHS tape. I'd watched it probably like 10 times already. And I convinced her on one of our break days that we could watch the movie while we, like, draw in our sketchbooks or whatever. And we played Batman in class. I was like,
Wow.
this is the best class ever.
That's amazing.
Um, but yeah, and then my senior year, we moved back to St. Louis, and I went to a bigger high school. It was like thousands of kids instead of, like, hundreds. And I just took all art classes, and I took photography, and I took some literature, like college literature type classes or whatever. And I just had that last year here. And by then I was like, well, I'm doing something with art, you know.
So
And
where do you go to school?
so then I went to Webster University here in St. Louis. Like, we live in Webster Groves. It's like a suburb of St. Louis. And then Webster University is here. And so I went there. It was a it, it was good art school. I got a scholarship, so that made it easy to, like my
Wow.
parents didn't have to help me afford it or anything. It was just um uh and they had a good art program. And so I
That's
just,
key.
yeah, I took, I went there, got all my art history, learned how to draw and paint better, and met my wife there, which is the best part. Um, and then at that point, what was interesting, my college experience was interesting because it was still, this is like 90, 91 to 95.
Yep.
Comics they aren't how they are now, and it's hard for people to explain, but it's 91 to 95. Look at what the industry was, and it's like, now I'm in art school and taking all the classes on painting and drawing, and they're teaching me how to, like, oil paint, you know, like all the traditional everything, uh, everything traditionally, and then secretly I want to, at this point I know I want to do comics because
Okay. Was there a tipping point for that?
there was a tipping point. Yeah, I skipped over that, but the tipping point was it was the year we went to, my brother and I, still friends, you know, we still in the comics. We would drive up to Chicago Comic Con. There was a big convention in Chicago, so we would drive up there every summer and go to that convention. And then we've gone like for years in a row. And then I don't remember which year this was, and we could date it by the issues. But uh, I went up there, and I was kind of burned out on comics. Like I was going to art school, and I was like, man, I like art, and I want to do something serious. And I feel like everything I was reading up to that point was like, I don't see a place for myself in comics. And I was kind of losing interest. Like I'd actually stopped reading comics for
Yeah.
like a year or two because it was post Image. Like Image had come out and I bought the issue ones of everything. And then the next issue twos like didn't come out or they were slow in coming out. And by that time I had gotten older. I was going to college uh, and kind of growing up in a lot of ways. And then and I was like, my heart was only half in it when we went to the convention, because I was like, I don't there's nothing I want, you know. And then and I hadn't really read a lot of stuff. My brother was still just like, and to this day, my brother is like huge comic book fan, you know, like everything. And
Wow.
but I was like, I was like, I think I'm too old. I might be too old for comics. Something's wrong with me, you know. And then, but we're walking around and I walked by the Fantagraphics booth and they had a spinner. They had like a little standing rack with 8 Ball. Issue one, two, three were all there. And I was like, what's this? I like the look pulpy and like weird. And I flipped through it and I was like, this looks good. So I picked those up with a bunch of other stuff. And then we're driving home. It's like a 5 hour drive from Chicago to St. Louis. And my brother's driving. So it's great because he's driving and I get to look at all the comics on the way home. And then and I just started reading 8 Ball one and Like a Velvet Glove was
Yep.
the back, it's like half of the issue, you know, and I was reading that and in the car I remember I just had to, it's weird, you don't have those moments very often, you know. It was like lightning bolt. And I'm like, this is what I need to do. Like he's doing something in comics that I haven't seen before that's for grown-ups, but it's not boring. It's not like autobiographical, like you know what I mean, like about artists jerking off and drawing or whatever. You know, it was like, which I was also reading that. Like I don't get me wrong, like I was reading those too, but it was like I didn't see something for
Yeah.
me in it. Like it was interesting and like Joe Mad. This is the era of Joe Mad and Peep Show and
Yep.
Seth and who are the other guys? I'm trying to think of who else is all that stuff. Hate was coming out at the same time. Hate
Yep.
was also in there too.
Yep. Love
Um,
and Rockets.
yeah, and like I love Hate, but which is funny, but I didn't see it didn't inspire me. It wasn't like hitting like, oh, I can. This shows me an avenue where I can go, where 8 Ball did, you know. And in that car drive on the way home, I was like, I'm doing comics, you know. I got to make comics, and I need to do
That's so
something.
amazing to me because like that I hadn't thought of that as a key influence on you, and it completely makes sense because that sort of intermingling of a more artistic sensibility, and I use artistic as a capital A artistic,
Yeah,
with genre elements is really a recursive theme in your work.
yeah,
And I know that you're a Philip K. Dick fan, and I know that that is something that has had a big influence on you. And coming out of the '80s, there wasn't a lot of, the channels were very limited and constricted. I mean, there was cable TV and everything, but like what you could see that was what we now classify as alternative, was not very abundant. It was very difficult to go find. William Burroughs was having a bit of a renaissance. I
yeah,
think that the sort of the 1990 to 95 Fantagraphics publishing, I think, is a staggering, array of real groundbreaking, mind blowing material.
yeah,
And what were some of the antecedents? Were there other antecedents for you? You know, were you a David Lynch guy? You know, there.
Yeah.
I look at these headwaters of like people, very influential people that were in the culture. Who were some of the others?
Yeah, no, what's funny is like you can never, it's not like comics got me into comics even too. It was like I like to write and draw, but I was also I was watching, I remember I took film appreciation my last year of high school, and then that opened my, I was like, oh my God, all these movies I hadn't heard of. And then I got my job out of high school was at a comic shop. So I was working at a comic shop, and next door was this movie store called Bijou Movies, and it was, and there was a comic fan or a customer that worked there, and so he would be like, hey, I work here, any movies you want, you can, you know, you can just have them, take them home and watch them or whatever. And it was all like indie stuff. Like he was totally curated. It's like the typical movie nerd guy who's like, you gotta watch this and you gotta watch this. So it was like, I, you know, I started watching. I would literally would just watch movies, go home and watch movies all the time. I was watching like Vin Vendors and who's this? Strangers in Paradise. What's the guy's name? The director.
Jarmusch.
Jarmusch. Yeah, I mean, I was watching. I just watched everything. I was watching all that stuff, you know, and then
That's
David
the golden age indie, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
Sundance, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. That whole thing that happens is a
yeah,
huge moment. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
yeah. No, no. It was like I'm pairing all that along with David Lynch, of course, which Twin Peaks was the thing that probably the biggest influence of all, because I hadn't known, I didn't really know David Lynch until Twin Peaks was coming out, and then
Yeah.
watching that first season, I was like, what is going? I love this. What is this? What else do you do? And then you go back and you see Blue Velvet, and then While the Heart comes out, and then it's just, yeah, it was all that stuff was feeding my uh whatever desire to like create something unique and new and interesting, you know. And then you look around at the comic book landscape, and it's like, to me, I was like, it was great because like there was so much space to do something new, you know. Where
That's
I,
interesting.
and I felt like even when I started college, I was like, I really want to do, I want to do movies, you know. I want to screenwrite or like do, you know what I mean? I want to, because that to me was the most, it has the most power, you know. It's like, because you get sound and music and but then I also felt like I knew my personality. It's not very I was not outgoing at all. I was super shy. Didn't like talking to strangers, you know. I'd always have my brother go up to the counter to do something for me because I was like, I don't want to even talk to the checkout person.
Oh,
So I had that going for me, and then also like I just want to control. I wanted total control. I wanted of everything, and then the older you get, you know this, like anything that's not you writing and drawing yourself, it's collaboration, and then you start to lose uh, that the control of it, you know. And it's like I don't want to do that. I don't want to. I want to do it all.
so it sounds like your brother liked to control his room and you like to control your stories.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, it's so funny that I'm like that, uh, because my room was a complete mess. My brother would get mad at me because I would go to sleep uh, on my comics. Like I would read comics in bed and I would fall asleep, and I'd wake up in the morning and I had slept on some of them. You know, like my GI Joe #1,
Yeah.
the cover was off. Like I still had the cover, but it had come separated, so I had to like keep it together. And my brother would just be aghast. He'd be like, this is why you don't touch my books." I was like, yeah, but you don't understand. I don't love and this to this day, it's like, I'm not a collector of
Right.
comics.
You're a
I
reader.
love comics. I want the comics, you know. I don't care about anything else.
Pull them up and put them in the back of your pocket. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so you're coming home from Chicago Comic Con. By the way, I think I was at that Chicago Comic Con. So
Were
let's
you,
just have that
yeah,
moment there. But
you
we'll
could
do that. Sorry,
yeah,
go
we
ahead.
pinpoint the exact year. I'm sure we could pinpoint the year. It was whatever year 8 Ball 3 had come out, because
Yep.
uh and
Yep.
so, yeah, we'll talk about that. Let's remember though, but was it in a professional capacity? Were you with
Yeah.
Malibu?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure you were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
fun.
so the so you're reading Eight Ball and you have this lightning moment.
Yeah.
And how much time do you have left in college?
Boy, I still had like 2 years, probably 2 or 3 years, because I remember meeting my wife, Charlene. She came over to my place, and then I was showing her that I was like, look, I want to do this is this is we were when we were first dating. She came over, and I was like, look, I'm really comics is what I want to do. And then we talked about all this deep stuff, and I was like, really, like my goal, like we talk about our goals in life and everything, and I was like, I have one goal uh, to achieve, and I want to write and draw a graphic novel and have it published. Like she reminds
Wow.
me all the time. She's like, remember when you told me like your life dream was to like get a book graphic novel published? And I was like, yeah, I remember, because it was just because I was so inspired. And so she came over. We were still like early in our relationship, and I was showing her different comics. And I was like, look, Eight Ball is like my favorite thing. Um, and I handed her an issue, and it's kind of weird. The issues are weird, you know. It's not really a thing you show on a first date. But she knew, you know, I mean, we're in art school and everything.
Yeah.
But this issue I gave her, I wonder if I still have it around. Um, but it was the one where it was the velvet glove. It was the stories in the front, but then on the back he would always do like a full color, like 1 page gag strip or whatever. And this one, I don't. This is, and you might have to bleep me out. Uh,
I I'm not gonna bleep, just let it fly.
yeah. But yeah, so she turns it over and she's like, and I was like, oh, I was like, no, don't start with that. The title of the comic strip was Needle Dick Bug Fucker. And I was like, well, don't start with that one. That's not really representative. But it was about this kid or whatever who had a needle dick and he was fucking bugs or whatever. It was like literally the worst thing you could show
Yes.
prospective
Mate.
girl that you're trying to date. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a date killer. Yeah.
It was, yeah, I was like, oh no, 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 you gotta in context.
Yeah.
uh
I'm gonna go over to this guy's house and I'm gonna read his perverted, horrific
yeah.
comments.
Yeah, I was like,
Oh,
oh boy. But
oh,
anyway, we're still married. It's been 23 years now, so it worked
hey,
out.
congratulations. That's
She knew who I was at the very beginning.
exactly. She knew from the start.
Uh,
Okay, so cool. So take me through that through the end of school and
yeah, so art was in art school, still the 90, like I graduated in 95. So we're still in an era where comics aren't considered literature or an art form, you know, and I'm watching in art class, I'm watching these kids go up with and post their art on the wall for critiques, and they're comic book pages, some of them. And I was like,
wow.
ooh, this isn't gonna go well, dude. You don't understand like that these teachers don't art comics aren't art, you know. They're not art yet. I was like,
Yep.
we can make it that, but they're not there yet, you know. And so you go up there and I would see this one kid in particular who just wanted to draw comics all the time. I'm like, this is not the assignment. You did not follow the assignment. And then he would just get his ass kicked in the critiques. And I
Yeah.
was like, I felt bad, but because I was like, I want to do that too, but you got to figure out a way around it, you know. And so I would always do. Uh, I was like an undercover comic artist, you know, learning all of fine art, you know. And but
Yep.
then what it helped me do was like we would have to do like a big charcoal drawing, you know, like 4 foot by 3 foot, these giant charcoal drawings. And so I would do that and I would fulfill the assignment. And then on the border along the edges, I did just a sequential art story of like the story
Wow.
of what was in the big picture. And I was like, well, I'm giving them, I figured out a way to do comics and to meet the prerequisites or the assignment, do the assignment and give them what they wanted, but then sneak in comics also in a way where they didn't really, I don't know that they put together that I was like, hey, he's going to take all this fine art and he's going to go do comics. We gotta stop him.
You're
So
sneaking it in.
yeah, yeah. And so I think in a weird way like that has been it was so formative for me about how I approached comics when I actually started doing them. And I was like, well, I want to do something different, but I also, I think comics can do more, be more. And then it helped me think differently about, like I was coming from a fine art background and applying those ideas to comics, you know, and I think that helped me just be a little different, uh, and try to like make a little noise in an industry that was still kind of growing, you know. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you graduate from art school and you're faced with the question that all graduates of art school are faced with, which is now
Yeah.
what?
No, I didn't. I had that. My dad told me when I went to school, even though I had scholarships and everything, so it wasn't like there's no pressure on them, you know. But I
Yeah.
think the pressure was like, you got to move out of the house. And I was like, so my dad was like, he's like, I don't, it doesn't matter, do whatever you want to do as long as you can get a job uh, out of school. You got to be able to get a job, you know, you got to be able to make a living.
Yep.
And my dad, like the way we grew up, my dad, what's funny is my dad is such a oddball. Like my mom was a preacher or a teacher, and like, you know, so we sort of had that, and then she promoted reading so much. And my dad was a preacher, but it was like he was like he's just the weirdest kind of guy. He's a preacher, but I almost feel like he was a preacher in a way where he's like an accidental preacher. I was like, how did you get into
Interesting.
that? Like he would be a good interview. I would love to watch
Interesting.
that one. But
Well, that's a storyteller though, right? You know, a
yeah,
preacher.
no, he totally is. You know, and I'm to this day jealous of his ability to speak, you know, and tell stories and all that because I'm the most reclusive, non-talking in public kind of person that could be, you know, and so I always like admired that. But he would always have these crazy ideas. Like he was always thinking of different ideas, and on the side he was into computers and he figured out how to learn fix computers. So he would do like the side hustle of like fixing computers, and then but he was always doing like he was preaching and he was always doing like a side hustle, always like some other little money making thing, you know. And like my brother and I still joke about it today where we're like, ooh, this could be a real money maker because he would always have these ideas for money making schemes, you know. And so like that wormed its way into me to the point where I was like, yeah, well I got a money making scheme. I'm gonna make comics.
I love it. Okay, so
But there was no way. By the time I got out of school, I was like, "There's no way." Like, this is '95, so Fantagraphic stuff was coming out, and I was really inspired by that. But I was like, I'm not good enough to be at that level, and the stuff I want to do is not. It doesn't fit like Marvel and DC's mold. I'll never get a job there because I don't want to write. I didn't want to write that kind of stuff or draw that kind of stuff. Um, but I did, but I knew graphic design at that point. So like Photoshop had just been invented and I learned that and learned design programs. So I just got design jobs out of school. And so I had my first job was the May company, which is like they did all the department stores. It was like, what were they? I can't remember. Not
yeah,
Dillard's. But
yeah,
anyways,
that's a good comp. I mean, they're a huge department store.
yeah, no, it was great because I was able to sort of hide. There was like an in-house design place. So like we were in an office and other designers, and then you sit in your cubicle at your computer, and I could kind of hide out there. I could write. I was writing comics during the day, and then going home and drawing them at night because I couldn't
Wow.
draw. Like I could sit at my computer typing, and it looks like I'm working, you know. So I could do that. I figured out writing during the day, and then I would go home and draw all night and just do like work on my first graphic novel like at night, you know.
Wow, how long did you work on that? I presume now we're talking about Pistol Whip, right?
Yeah, PISTOLWHIP. And but before PISTOLWHIP, this is like a 3 year period where I was doing the graphic design during the day and I was doing mini comics at night. So I would write these mini comics during the day and then I would draw them at night. And then when I was done drawing them, I would go into the office after hours and like print out color covers and make these hand
Wow.
assemble these mini comics, and put those together. And I probably did like 300 pages worth of mini comics. And I would print up like 100 of them and I would take them to like the Chicago to Chicago Comics and drop them off there for consignment, and then the local shop in St. Louis, and then um, go to like little local shows and sell them there, you know, just to like, I feel like I was just practicing. I was learning the craft, you know?
Clearly,
Yeah.
clearly. I mean, that's huge. That's an apprenticeship. And I think, there's a bunch of things in there that I think are really instructive to take time to talk about. Forgive me for a second for taking over. It's, I just get killed on social media with people that are like, the bad example is, um, you publish Power Rangers, I want to write Power Rangers. And it's like some dude that's never written anything, right? Or,
Yeah.
My analogy with that is I always say, like, you don't buy a ticket to a basketball game and then out of the bleachers, you walk down to the coach and you say, put me in. I've got a great right hook. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And I think for people to understand that the thing that I see over and over and over again with the best in the business is that they laser like know what they're going to do, and then they do it, and they don't let anything stop them, and they don't wait for permission. They don't ask anybody, would you publish me? They focus on their craft, they work on it, and they do it year after year after year after year until they're undeniable. And there's another thing in here that I think is super fascinating is your dad's side hustle, right? So you've got your day job, and then
Yeah.
here's your side hustle. You're making mini comics. You're going up to Chicago Comics, which is an absolutely legendary store that's like massive, huge in the alternative community, and a great patron of so many creative people supporting them, like carrying your books, because I think most shops, it wouldn't have been a match. And if it was a match, they don't want some dude coming in, putting stuff on their shelves, trying to, cop their space. And so that's a huge deal. And then, setting up at shows, being entrepreneurial and getting out there. And I think in particular, something that's so amazing, and I think this is, again, I want to point this out for the audience, is that you don't have a space in this market. You're not identifying too much with Fantagraphics, some, but not too much. And you're definitely seeing that Marvel and DC is not your space. And that gap, you don't look at that gap as a wasteland where you're going to freeze and die. You're looking at that gap as an opportunity. And I think, it's crucial when you're setting out on a journey to see the opportunities and not the obstacles, because there's so many obstacles to success. If you start to see obstacles, you'll never stop seeing them, and you'll never go on your journey. And so I think it's incredible that you see what the opportunity is, and you're right. You've carved an incredible career, and you then pursue the path. You sort of have the background to have the spunkiness to go out and do it on your own. Anyway, I'm going to hand the mic back to you and shut up. But there's so much here that's incredible. I think these are really crucial years.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's funny. Like in hindsight, I see all that, you know, at the time, I'm just like, oh, I really do. I, here are my options, right? I can write novels, or I can work on movies, or I can do comics. Those are the three things I'm like, I love all of these things, you know, I really love them all. I'm passionate about all of that. I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I really did look at comics. And I was like, well, this is like, it's still such a new art form. You know what I mean? It's brand new, like in the grand scheme of like all the novels ever written.
Yep.
So I looked at that and I was like, well, I'm not, let's be honest here. I'm not gonna write the best novel that's ever been written. You know, I won't write one that gets in the top 100. You know, it's just, I didn't do it enough. I didn't, you know what I mean? As much as I love it, like there's just no way, you know? And I look at movies and I was like, there's too much collaboration there. There's too much, you know what I mean? It's a miracle when a good movie gets made, you know? And as I got older, and I know you know it, it's like you see, when I do see a good movie now, I'm like, unbelievable. I can't believe that actually got made, you know?
You know what they say in the business?
Yeah.
they say in the business, they say good movies don't get made, they escape.
Yeah, yeah. No, nobody noticed.
Yeah.
The, so yeah, and I looked at comics and I was like, well, it's still a young industry. I want to be in a place where I can make an impact, where I could do something um, that has a chance of being in the top 100 of all time, and it's because right now there's only like 50. I
Right.
could for sure be 51 or at least in the top 100, and so I think part of it was that I was like, I don't want to, and I love comics and I love the control you can have, and I love visual arts and storytelling, and it just was like I wasn't gonna not do it. It was like it was just, you know what I mean? At a certain point, you realize this is what I was supposed to be doing. you know?
So you're going to these shows and you're getting some positive feedback, I take it.
Yeah,
And
I don't know. Here's what's funny about going to those shows. I went to those shows, didn't talk to anybody because I was terrified to do it. I would sit there, and this is even when my first book was published, this is what happened, is I would sit there and hope that nobody would come up. I hope somebody would just come up and quietly just buy the book and go away and not interact with me at all. It's like, it's probably the story of almost every comic book creator ever,
yep,
please don't talk to me. I don't want to talk.
I'm an
Um,
introvert, I'm scared.
yeah, yeah. I was like, I stay home doing comics all day because I don't want to talk to people. um, so, so what I would do is I would go to these local shows and then try my best, and it's like, who knows how it went, and I would sell a few, and then I dropped them off at Chicago Comics, the local shops. I never went back to those comic shops to see if they sold. Never went back because to me, part of it was I was like, oh, if they didn't sell, I don't want to know. And
Yeah.
then part of it was like, the other part was like, it doesn't matter if it's sold. To me, it doesn't matter. It's $5, right? And I'm not gonna. It wasn't about the money. It was about like, I need practice. I need to get pages under my belt. I need to learn how to tell stories. By the time I had actually printed and brought the thing into the comic shop, I hated the book. It looked bad. And it was like, I can do better. Because especially at that age, you're making huge leaps. Like every page is a huge leap. So it's like every book I did like 3 mini comics and then a larger format one. And those first 3 were just, I still like the ideas in them. Man, they're rough, and I still have them. I should have bought them. I could have. They're in a box back there, um, but yeah. I mean, I would do like 100 or I do 50, and then I would take like a handful to Chicago Comics or somewhere else, and I just sat on the rest. I was like, I don't. It wasn't about. It was about making it. It was about figuring out the production. How do you put like, oh, 4 pages per, all of the figuring of that stuff out. That's what I was trying to do. And here's the other key. Um, like if somebody's aspiring or whatever, is also like to be honest with yourself, and like where you're at and what your level is. And I don't mean, and I think it can go both ways. Like you can be like Chris Ware and you're like, oh, I suck, I'm the worst. I'm like, no, you're not. You're the top 5 of all time or whatever. And so that drives me crazy because I don't want to hear that. I was like, you're not assessing yourself accurately. But the flip side is to know when your stuff sucks. And I knew that, especially those first 3 books, there was good ideas and I've done some fun things, but they're not good. they're not, I wasn't ready. I'm still learning how to tell the story visually, and I'm still learning how to draw better, and I'm using, like, I learned how to paint and I can draw with charcoal, and but like pen and ink, what I mean, it's hard to make pen and ink look good and then reproduce well and everything. And so there was a learning curve there. And so I was just honest with myself. I'm like, I'm glad these exist. I'm glad I did them, but they're not ready. I never tried to get published for those first 3 comics I did because I was like, this isn't ready yet. Like, I'm not good enough. You look around and like, am I as good as, you have to be at least as good as the worst thing out there, and I wasn't quite that good yet. I was like, even the worst thing is a little better than mine.
Well, that's really good. I mean, I think that it's hard for a lot of creative people to have the antenna that are can tell where you are in the pack. And I think it's very useful. And I think having the self-awareness is a real gift. And so that's a tremendous, that's not really something that you can hone as a skill, but it is, it's a hell of a thing. That's a huge gift on your professional journey.
No, it's definitely. I think I'm just not emotion. I'm emotional about the work while I'm doing the work, and then when the work is done, I have absolutely no ties to it. I have no connection to it afterwards. Like I'm not attached to it. Like no, there's no precious baby that I make. You know what I mean? It's just like I could. I don't know what it is. There's a disconnect for me when it's done, and I think to me the fun of doing the thing is the doing of it and the making of it and the excitement of like how's it going to turn out and like and then all of those decisions you make, like the thousands of decisions you make on every page and everything, and the inking and the physical process of all of that. uh, I love that part. um, and I like coming up with a story idea. Like it's fun to do that. Like when you get an idea, I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. And I'll tell my wife, listen, this idea, it's gonna be so cool. And then when it's done, I'll be like, wow, look at I did this thing. I can only brag to her. I don't. And but then as soon as it's done, then it's like, uh,
Totally.
yeah, it's, well, I need to do something. I want to do another thing or do a better thing or try to beat the thing I did or so I think I can look at the thing and know, like, yeah, it's not quite ready, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so you're doing mini comics, you're at cons, you're dropping off at Chicago Comic Con, excuse me, Chicago Comics.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
Um, I still do my design jobs. And then I think my last year at May Company, I decided, uh, I was like, I gotta quit this. It was just super depressing. And I just couldn't stand like the corporate atmosphere. And I still wasn't, my comics weren't quite ready yet. So I was like, I need a new job. So I got like a job at a smaller like design firm. It was just like three of us, and we designed like newspapers and corporate annual reports, and like, and I really learned Photoshop. I learned everything you could about design. Like I could design anything at that point. And I just learned all the technical side of it, which I always thought was like, well, this is good because if I if I'm just self-publishing the rest of my life or just whatever, I'll be able to do it. I'll be able to handle everything. But that place was too small. Like I couldn't write during the day because there's only like three of us. So I actually had to work. I was like, this sucks. I don't want to, I can't write and work at this place. Uh, so I found another job. This is terrible, all my past employers. Anyway, but I found another job
None
after
of
that.
them will see this.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I'm sure they're proud of me. But I worked at the Sporting News, which is it was magazines. So I did some magazine design and like direct mail stuff, and then coffee table books, which was actually the most fun. Like these big sports coffee table books with tons of photos and like, and I learned even more about. I just got better as a designer. And um, was it at that job? And I think that was the job where my first book got published. So I'm kind of jumping back and forth. I had my day job career, so I was
Yep.
making a living, and then this whole time now I'm still doing mini comics, and then uh, but then I did this mini comic called Liquid Paper, which was about like this artist who's like trying to figure out his voice, and I had just read like Cages, so
Oh my
that
God, I
was
love
right.
Cages.
Yeah,
Oh, I love Cages so much.
I
It's
know. It was,
there's two comics that my wife allows in the house, and it's
yeah,
Masquerade and Cages.
yeah. No, those are two good. If you're gonna have two, maybe those are Desert Island books. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, somebody tweeted this week, what's the comic book scene that lives rent free in your head? And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, right away I knew Cages. It was where where the where spoiler for Cages. It's been out. If you haven't read it, you should read it. But so it's where the wife and the husband and they're taking everything that this husband loves away. So they're taking all of his books, and then they take all these things, and then at the end she's like, well, how come I'm still here? And I was like, oh.
Ooh.
And it was just like, anyway,
So
so that was, I was reading that at the time, and so I was like, I'm gonna do this artist on his journey to find like true art or find his voice or whatever, and it's this super pretentious, horrible, horrible story. But
super pretentious isn't always, doesn't mean it's a bad story.
no, and here's the thing, I like it because it is like it's a document of where I was at the time and who, I mean, I just got out of art school, I was doing design and trying to figure things out. So it's, to me, it's, I would never sell it and I would never show it. Like the handful of people that own one, I was like, that's fine. I don't know who they are. But in between, so interspersed with that is the story is this guy who's like trying to do fine art, and in between are these comic strips called Mitch Pistolwhip, and it's about this detective. And then there's a parallel between like this detective and the pulpy comic strip, and then the artist and like his journey or whatever. And it's like this guy trying to figure out, am I going to do this or am I doing that? And it's basically, am I doing fine art? What am I doing with my life? Or am I going to do comic strips that are super popular and people love them and they're fun, and it's, so it's an interesting comic. And again, I like handcrafted every one. So the binding is like this black taped edge that I did every one of, and then color covers, and then the comic is just on paper, but then the comic strips, I got newsprint, and I figured out how to print on newsprint. And so the
Wow.
comic strips are on these newsprint with like fake news articles. They're embedded in like in a, and I drew in a different style. So this Mitch Pistolwhip character is like more of a cartoony, polished style. And at the time, I remember, and this is what I used to teach kids comics too. That's later on. But I would always say like, one of the questions is like, how do you find your style? It's like, how do you find your voice, your style? I was like, well, you don't. You end up it ends up being what it is. Like it's like handwriting. How did you find your handwriting? I'm like, well, somebody taught you how to write, and then you messed it up. you know.
My favorite quote about that is from Eric Larson, the creator of Savage Dragon
Yeah.
Vintage. And what Eric says is, he says, style is what you do wrong.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was, for these particular strips, I was like, I love Jeff Smith, and like his lines are so clean and it's so polished and fun and great. And I was like, so I tried to draw like that. I was like, I'm gonna draw him to look like that. The cleanest, most. Well, I really worked on my like brush strokes to get my clean lines and everything, and I completely failed at that. So if you look at it, you'll never know that that's what I was trying to do. But I sort of fell into like, oh, I like this. Like I'm not good at this, using this brush the way he does it, but when I do it, it comes out like this. But I kind of like it, and it's not, I'm not Dave McKean, I'm not Jeff Smith, I'm like some weird, horrible mashup. you know?
Well, it leads me to, sort of that idea of pistol whip is like, it reminds me of almost like a Dick Tracy thing. And,
Yeah.
the Dick Locher, or I think it's Locker, the way his line work, like when you're sitting there talking about like that Jeff Smith brushwork, some of those old masters, I mean, what they could do, I mean, it was amazing. Anyway, sorry, I couldn't help but put the tangent in.
No, it's so great. And then I'm trying to learn like, and it's interesting because I'm trying to use the tools that they use and draw how they draw, because that's like, especially back in the day, it's like it had to be reproducible, and like,
Yeah.
and so I'm coming from fine art where I'm like, I could draw like, but I was like, I'm not gonna be able to like charcoal draw or like paint, because it's not reproducible, especially in photocopied mini comics. So I had to try to make myself learn this other, it's a different art form, really. Like inky comics is such a crazy art form.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, and then out of that mini comic came this character Mitch Pistolwhip, and I was like, that was the most fun I had. Like it was like 40 pages of mini comic with like 5 pages of that in the middle. And I was like, the most fun I had was those 5 pages. Like I was like, I need to do that, you know, and sort of, and then I sort of processed what I loved about 8 Ball, which is like he's doing pulp stories, you know, and he's having fun doing it. And I was like, I just need to do that. I need to flip the formula. So it's not like this artist on a journey and then with some fun stuff. It's fun stuff, but it's really an artist on his journey, you know. But it
That's
doesn't
incredible.
look like it. Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I think it's like, I just don't even know how to put that into words. I mean, having that moment of having that realization and understanding that you need to flip it like that, and that liquid paper being that moment where you're doing what I think a lot of folks do, which is you're kind of going autobio and you're trying to kind of like, you know, what they say is tell your truth, and you're telling your truth at that moment and you find it, you know, there it is. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, no, it was so like to me those books, as much as I will have a box of them forever and I show them off, as people every once in a while somebody will find out about it, or well, this will happen. I'll talk about it. And they're like, hey, you have any of those for sale? I know you're sitting on them. I was like, and then part of me is like, no, I'm not ever I'm never gonna sell those. I have I know that I share a studio with Brian Hurt, who we met like at one of those little local shows a long time ago. He's got copies, and he's the only person I know that has copies because he bought them as like a friend. We just met, and he's like, "I'll buy your book," and and so he has them still. But man, to me, it's just process. It's the stuff you leave in your wake to get
Yeah.
where you're going, you know. And it's like I don't, and even to this day, I still feel that way, even about published books. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't. Every once in a while, I'll flip through them, but I never go back and read anything. I just feel like that's to me it's a document of where I was when I did it, and then that's what it is, you know. But
Yeah.
So that's the first part of the Matt Kindt interview. Thank you for watching. We'll be posting the second part real soon. And Matt is an absolute joy to talk to. Really amazing career path, spending so much time building up a skill set. I'd like to remind you before I go to hit the subscribe button, click like, give me a comment, and share if you can. If you enjoy the series that I'm trying to do here, talking to comic book creators, please let other people know. Thank you so much.